Your success is 100% your fault. Sit with that thought for a moment. It may sound harsh until you realise what it means. Nobody is going to hand it to you, and nobody can take it away from you either. And that theme runs deep through the life of Kieren Jack. Kieren was the kid the AFL originally looked straight past. Too small, too slow. The son of a rugby league legend who was supposed to play an entirely different type of game. While Kieren was the last pick in the draft, nobody was going to outwork him. He turned initially being overlooked into a 256-game career, an AFL Premiership, co-captaining the Sydney Swans, and a place in the club's Hall of Fame. Then he did it all over again, building a second career from scratch, studying an MBA, closing deals worth hundreds of millions at KPMG, and now a seat on the executive team rebuilding the West Coast Eagles. This conversation was recorded live in front of a Defence Force audience in Western Australia, and this is part of Performance Intelligence's Social Mastery program. There are no second takes, there's no detailed script, just a real conversation between two people as it happened on the day, and we are bringing it to you exactly how it played out. You will hear a few noises in the room, like a secure door opening and closing, a few laughs, and the odd interruption. If you have ever carried more than your fair share and wondered whether the effort counts, listen closely, as it became crystal clear as the conversation with Kieren progressed. While talent gets you through the door, character decides what you do once you are inside. This is the show that brings potential into everyday life. This is Performance Intelligence. So welcome to Defence Force in Western Australia.
Thank you.
Let's start with, you played 256 AFL games. In your Hall of Fame induction, you said, the players that succeed the most are the ones who work the hardest. If talent gets you through the door, what is the thing that determines who rises and who doesn't, considering everyone in the room is talented?
Yeah, just an observation that over 15 years that rang true, right? Like I got to the club at the end of 2005, so Sydney Swans have just won the Premiership. So I'm looking around and Adam Goods, Barry Hall, Drew Bolton, Brett Kirk, like that. Talented, yes, but they were so hardworking, and it sort of stemmed from the ethos that Roosie had, which was it was character over talent. That was how they recruited, and they wanted to buck the trend with what the draft typically was, which was an identifier of talent. So the club wanted to make finals every year. That was a non-negotiable. So really high standards, and really to win premierships, you've got to probably be top four. And I think over the last 25 years, Sydney have missed the finals, I'm going to say 4 times, right? Which just shouldn't happen when you've got equal spending, soft caps, your draft, which says if you finish down the bottom, you get the best kids. But they just have this ethos of they're able to keep going generationally, just keep going on the fly. So I saw it with a number of players. Roosie was he was looking out of the sphere too, like use the rookie list as a chance to go and identify different talent. And one of those I saw was Mike Pike, who, Canadian rugby player, represented Canada in the World Cup, scored a try against the All Blacks, which he always talks about. Went and played rugby in France, was talking to one of the Ella brothers who was his coach and said, you should go to Australia and play this game of AFL. Now, he was 25 and he's like, I've never heard or seen of...
That's old to make the transition.
25, like most players right in their career there. But he was 6'7", so athletic profile, strong, could run, could jump. And Roosie brought him down for a training session. And I'll never forget, it was over at Homebush, and we had our main session before we played. And then Mike came onto the ground just for a bit of a kick and a catch to see how he would go. And he couldn't catch a ball. And we're sort of going, we're going to pick this bloke up in the rookie draft. And we ended up doing it. And I'd never seen a bloke work harder on just craft, just hours and hours. He was so determined to make it. Ended up playing 120 games, was pivotal in the 2012 grand final. And it just reinforced talent gets you through the door at times for the draft, but what sets you aside is the ability to work hard. And there's working harder than there's genuinely working hard.
You know, half the men in the room now think they can go and make AFL draft. Looking around, there's a few guys go, yeah, I'm 35, Mike Pike did it. When you talk about draft, were you the top 10? Where was your number?
I was a bit off the top 10.
Top 50?
I said draft was an identifier of talent. So my draft year, there was 80 draft picks. I missed the draft, so I didn't get selected. They then have what's called a rookie draft, which is almost the offcuts, which get a 1-year rookie deal, and it sits separate to the main list. So it's an experimental play. And I was the last pick in the rookie draft, which was pick 58. So technically speaking, I was 138 in the draft. So not a lot of hope for me going through the system. But I started late, obviously, later to the game of AFL. Grew up in a rugby league family. Rugby league was what I wanted to be. You know, my father played 250 games for the Balmain Tigers, or West Tigers as they're called now. Won the Golden Boot in 1987, which was the best player in the world at that time. We'd spent some time in England when he went and, as most players typically do even now, went and played over there for 3 or 4 years. So rugby league was life.
Superannuation fund.
That was a super, 100% it was. Yeah, wish they had that in the AFL. I'd still be playing. And then sort of came back and made the life here in Sydney, and rugby league was the game. And it wasn't until the age of 12 I stumbled across AFL footy and loved what it was about. You know, I was a small kid, but skillful and fit, and just sort of suited me at that age, and just really enjoyed it. So sort of played the two sports up until 15, and made a call at 15 that AFL was going to be my sole focus. And so by the time I got to the club at the age of 18, I very quickly sort of understood that was a fair way back. Like, and I had a 1-year contract to try to at least impress some people to get another year. And I think I did just enough to get a second year. My role was very limited I say limited, but my strengths were I was fit, I was fast, and I could defend, right? So very quickly, they started to think that I could play as a back pocket and almost tag the opposition player's most crafty, skillful forward pocket. And Jared Crouch, who they made a name for himself at Sydney, had that role at that time. And I think they saw me as someone who could succeed him at some point and play that role for the club. So that was, Crouchy became my mentor. Swans had a really strong mentor program where a senior player would be assigned to a younger player, and you just get to know each other and share knowledge and go through match vision with them. And so I learned a lot off Crouchy, and over the years had like Brett Kirk and Jude Bolton and these types of players just to learn off. And I think like the art of coaching is one thing, but often your best coaches are your senior players. And so it's this take in the AFL of just cut the list and just get all young players in. I don't subscribe to that when teams just go all in on young talent, because you need senior players there to actually show the way, especially ones that have done it before and sort of live that success. And I said I was lucky. I got to the club at the end of 2005, and there was a whole heap of senior players to just learn off and follow.
So go back to when you were 15. I've never asked you this question. You might refer back to the keeper. I've worked with a lot of athletes who, Australian representatives. I can remember Kieran Perkins, Australian swimming legend, took his young son to swimming, and one of the other parents said, "My son just beat Kieren Perkins' son." They're 5 years of age. And Kieren walked away. I won't say exactly what he said, but it was like, God, I don't want my kids to be judged in my shadow. So at 15, was that a conscious decision? Because your dad, so we're in WA at the moment. Perth Bears are coming here next year. Yeah. I think the NRL's got some work to do. So I'll make sure Wayne Pearce, NRL Commissioner, listens to this. So, Junior, you've got some work to do, mate. But did you make a conscious decision to not be in your dad's shadow, to go AFL, or did you think you were going to be better in AFL, or was there another reason?
It wasn't conscious at the time, but if I reflect on it, I think there was something subtle in there, which was AFL was my own identity, right? And I wouldn't lie to you, like the amount of times I'd be playing footy and they go, "Oh, that's Kieren Jack's kid." The pressure was always there, and I also played fullback, and so that also didn't help. When I played AFL on the weekends, there was none of that. It was just there's Kieren, like he's just playing. So and I enjoyed that, and felt like I was probably forging my own path. But also I just loved the game. I got exposed to it, as said, late, and just thought it was a terrific game to play and suited me.
History might show you made an okay decision.
Maybe.
2012
so.
grand final.
Who remembers the 2012 grand final? Sydney Swans beat
Hawthorn, the Hawks.
By Savage. Canterbury to Malchesky. Is that the grand final? Sydney are premiers.
And they're home all right. They've done it. What a team. That culture, the Bloods. That's what it's all about.
So draft pick number 138 from NRL Prodigy. You must have soaked up the moment after 2012, and
It was a couple of years in the making, right? Like, it was 2009, we missed the finals. So I think in my 14-year career, we missed twice. And 2009 was the first time. And coincidentally, my last year of footy was the second time we missed finals. So 2009, pivotal moment. We're probably coming off the transition of the successful era of the 05, 06 teams that played the Eagles. And some of those players are starting to move on. It was Brett Kirk, Michael O'Loughlin, Leo Barry. They're all starting to retire at that point in time, and this younger wave was coming through. Again, Ruzi didn't want to wait. He went to the trade that year in end of 2009 and 2010, and 2010 ended up being his last year. So that was almost his legacy to leave behind the club. Went picked up some pretty handy players in Shane Mumford, Josh Kennedy and Ben McGlynn, who they traded Hawthorn for pick 40-something or 50, which was crazy that they would allow that. And then picked up Lewis Jetta in the draft. And that sort of formed the nucleus that all of a sudden there's a young team coming through. So I think they, from a list management point of view, they identified those that had the strengths but weren't getting the opportunity at clubs. And Josh was probably the standout in that group. Came from famous father and grandfather at Hawthorn, and was in a Hawthorn team which had just stars everywhere littered through the midfield. So Josh was playing half forward and he didn't understand his role. And he tells a story, Ruzi basically went to him and said, we'll give you a 3-year deal straight up, come up to Sydney and we'll play in the midfield. And so he just jumped at it and became one of Sydney's greatest ever players. So that started. We made the second week of the finals in 2010, so a year after not making it. We were a bit hamstrung with injuries in 2011, but in 2012 it started to click, and that the years of training and hard work, and I guess the maturity of that squad too, which well led by, Adam Goods and Jared McVeigh and Jude Bolton. I look back at that team and there wasn't anyone you just couldn't rely on. I think one of the things I miss about footy now, I don't miss much of it, Maisie, but one of the things I do miss is that huddle period that you get before a game, and it's almost like it's the eyeball test. You're just going around and you sort of yep, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you. And there was some moments throughout my career I'd look at it, there'd be question marks. You're sort of not sure about certain players. But I reckon that 2012 team was just trust all the way. And everyone knew their role. We had a lot of offcuts from Marty Mattner from Adelaide, for instance. Reece Shaw was sent away from Collingwood, came up to us, said Mike Pike, Shane Mumford. There was a lot of either rookie list players or traded players in that team.
like the John West, wasn't it?
It was a bit of that.
Where they fished the John West.
Yeah, the only top 5 pick that we had was Jared McVeigh in that. Goodsy was picked 40-odd in his draft. So that is something I'm proud of to be a part of, and it was a fantastic team. Yeah, and that grand final was pretty good too. It went down to the wire. It was, last 2 minutes of the game where it's even, and you're playing out these moments that you've trained all year. How do we get field position? How do we set up in stoppages? Who are the dangerous players? But everyone kind of knew their role in that because we trained it all throughout.
We spoke about that earlier today, that you front load those cognitive and physical skills. So you do the hard work now, you get paid back months and months down the track.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people outside of elite sport have any idea how hard you guys train. I didn't. So you joined 2006, Swans.
Yep.
05, I would have been there 06. I was a runner.
I reckon I remember you actually once out the front of the pack.
I had a bit of hair back then. So
Running with Spursy, were you?
With Spurs,
you
I was.
were the whippet. We used to try to catch you. That's what we used to do.
So when I transitioned from AFL, surprised you remember me because I was 20 kilos lighter and had hair. They get the washed-up middle distance runners to go and train with the AFL guys. And so as an ex-track and field athlete, I thought, Sydney Swans, footballers, I'm going to smash these guys. First session we're at Centennial Park. I can remember Fosdyke.
Yep, good runner.
Goods.
Elite, yeah.
Like elite middle distance runners. You guys train ridiculously hard. I was blown away at how fit. And then when you look into it, a lot of midfielders and on-ballers are ex-state champion, high school track athletes.
Yep.
There's a real fitness base.
Yeah, Dan Hanbury was one I trained with as an elite middle distance runner as a school kid. These are guys that would have run, 9:50. We used to do 3K time trials, and at that point it was sort of cross country around Moore Park and up and down. The guys there were doing 9 minutes 10. For 3K, we're doing 2:40.
Anyone in the room do a 9:10 3K?
Early 2:40s for a 1K.
9:10.
Yeah, so that was their strength. That was their midfield strength. Finally, like someone like Adam Goods, for instance, that wasn't necessarily his strength. His strength was anywhere from 100 metres to 400 metres, and we used to do like interval running, just up for 200, jog back, and he would go to the front of the line, and someone would try to run with him, and then blow up, and he'd go back to the start. Someone else would try to beat him, and he'd just keep beating everyone. Like unbelievable tank. And that was how he played.
It was a Dave Misson special, that session, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was. When you're doing anywhere from, even now it's sort of 14 to 16 kilometres in a game, but it's high speed and
you're getting hit.
And you're getting hit, and you got to make decisions and execute skills under pressure. Like it's a challenging game. And that era was when it was sort of heading. The interchange caps didn't exist. So teams were just literally rotating players on and off. And we were doing up to 150, 160 interchanges a game, which if you follow NRL football, you're like, that's just nuts because they do 8.
You get 8, yeah.
And I think now the caps come down to about 75, but that was when Longmire had taken over and we started to introduce this rolling interchange method of, he penned the analogy, take the baton. It's almost like when you come off the ground, you pass the baton on to the person who's there and you take it, and when you're on, you do your job. And so take the baton became, and it was picked up in the AFL grand final montage where they stick a microphone under the coaches' rooms. And there's this excerpt that Horse has got pre-game. He still talks about that. It's your turn, you take the baton. And that's rung true around the club ever since. And take the baton's become something that the Swans use for, yes, it's on field, but it's also off field in terms of their leadership. And so the transition of leadership that's there, when it's your turn to lead the club, you take the baton, you take the responsibility of it, you do your best. And when it's your turn, you give the baton to someone else. And so take the baton, they've just completed the new headquarters there. It's up in lights. Take the baton with the Premiership team, which is there. And so all the current players are now a part of that history and feel the ownership now. It's their turn.
Natural segue now would be to talk about you becoming co-captain. But before we do, after the grand final, I think you took the baton to party a little bit.
I just told you in the back. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I did. Obviously enjoyed it.
So you won the grand final?
We won the grand final. I went with a few players and enjoyed it, and then came back, and a teammate of mine, Tony Armstrong, who's made a bit of a name for himself for the ABC. Tony was the emergency of the grand final, and he's I think he's still scarred by that he was so close but missed out. He was so determined to get back the following year. So I came back from America and started training straight away with him and basically ran myself into a brick wall, came back the first session and almost collapsed, and then found out I had glandular fever. So I spent 8 weeks basically bedridden through December and January before starting the 2013 season, which was my first year as co-captain. So it wasn't a great start. But I think the build-up of my tank was already there. I had an extended break. It didn't take me long to regain, but I had challenging year in that I couldn't do much during the week because my body would just start to shut down. Like there was vision of me after a game. I had a dressing gown on, had a cup of tea in my hand and Fox Sports were playing. I'd fallen asleep in the corner of the room. This is just so depleted and exhausted after a game.
Is that a dressing gown on and a cup of tea?
Yeah, that was my post-game meal, so to speak. But I couldn't, because of just the fatigue in my body at that point in time, I just shut down quite quickly. So during the week, I wasn't doing a lot. I'd do bare minimum. Then on the game day, obviously exhaust myself for 2.5 or 3 hours and then just shut down again. So it was a pretty crazy year.
We had a pretty open discussion this morning about when proverbial hits a fan, that you can have all the right systems physically, psychologically, but you've got to deal with adversity. But I think that year you made All-Australian team, is that right? 2004?
I did, yeah.
So there's 700 plus AFL players. You're whittled down to the top 22.
Yep.
What did you learn in that year? Like things are going against you.
Yeah.
You're not training. You're on Fox Sports in a dressing gown. Did they have captains like Grandpa and they must have
don't worry, teammates did. Absolutely they did. No, it was more in the what can I control piece. And obviously that was frustrated that I couldn't do the training during the week, but I could control the rest that I was getting, what I was putting in my body, making sure that I was as best prepared for the actual 2.5 hours of game day as I possibly could, and just prioritise that. The other pieces I couldn't. So that was the year of learning that, really, because there's an element of luck too here, right? If I get injured during the year and I'm trying to fight to get fitness back, I probably would have struggled, but I managed to stay relatively healthy injury-wise and started to get into a routine that worked. I'd take it easy Monday to Wednesday, extra recovery, extra massage, look after my body, do a bit of a main session on Thursday, then go back into this recovery mode. And then by game day, I felt like I was right to go.
Well, transition to talk about, you mentioned your father before, Gary Jack. I can remember watching him playing for the Tigers, playing State of Origin for New South Wales at time of recording. I think the Origin's picked in 5 days, and then playing for Australia. Does anyone in the room ever have conflict with their family?
Yes.
Are you all perfect? So we all have conflict with our family. The challenging thing for you, KJ, is that conflict was played out.
Yeah.
In front of public. Now, in preparation for this, I said, are you okay to talk about this? So you haven't spoken about this much, so I appreciate you being open to this discussion. But yeah, when you have family conflict behind closed doors, it's hard enough. When you have family conflict, which is on the back page and front page of the main papers, and I haven't asked you this, we catch up once or twice a year with a few mutual mates, and normally we drink a fair bit of red wine and beer, so it's not a very deep conversation, is it?
No.
I really want to know, how did you get through that period?
I think great support around me. For those unaware, I consciously have not spoken publicly about it. I think it sits separately. But yeah, I had a falling out with both parents. So and it was the last thing that I wanted to happen. But at some point in time, after trying to come to a resolution on the topic, it wasn't healthy for me, for my partner, for brother. So just almost had to cut the cord. I was captain of the football club. We were right in the thick of it with footy, and footy by any nature, you're in the most selfish business that there can be. I do believe, and the reason I probably didn't have kids, and I sort of think now, if I had kids back when I played, I don't know how I would have gone, because I don't reckon that balancing act would have tipped one way or another. But yeah, that 2016, when it all came to a head from just a public tweet that was written, it was sort of on the precipice of blowing up anyway, and partly because I was in Sydney and my dad was a famous footballer, so there was a bit of a public interest around it. Yeah, you don't prepare for it. It's one of the things that I did find was that the club are amazing in supporting me and helping me get through it. It was on the eve of my 200th game too, so we were about to go down to Geelong and play Geelong. We just lost at home to the Western Bulldogs, and we're heading into a finals campaign. Just for context for any of our audience, for the podcast that don't follow AFL, going to Geelong and playing at Cardinia Park, I think at that period it was an 89 or 90% would have been
win rate for Geelong. So majority of teams go there and they get slaughtered. So you're your 200th game. That's huge. That's a big achievement for someone who's drafted 138 and was told he probably is not going to play this game. Yeah. So you're getting ready for this, and I can remember this was on the news. It was in every newspaper. I remember we used to read them back then before they were on our mobile phone. I just can't imagine how you stayed focused before your 200th game in Geelong.
I couldn't believe that the morning show paused its viewing on Channel 7 to go to my press conference first thing in the morning. And I've gone, obviously, to 200 games, so you have to do a press conference for it, and it all sort of blew up the night before. And it was lead story of a current affair, and I'm just going, oh shit, I just don't need this. We got a big enough game to worry about as it is. And turning up and like the amount of cameras that were there, it was bigger than a grand final press conference. It was huge, just people from everywhere, and just wanted to know. I just maintained it was private and it needed to stay private, and just committed to the game at hand.
My stance on it is pretty clear. It's a private matter, and my wish is for it to stay that way. I'm not going to get caught into commenting too much on it. What I will say is my priorities of support are firmly with my partner and my little brother, who I love and care for very much. And as distressing as probably the events have been, the level of support that we've given each other, on top of friends, other family members, teammates, the Sydney Swans in general, it's probably highlighted to us how lucky we are that we've got those people in our life. So that's all I'm going to say on it. It is a big week. Someone told me it's my 200th game this week, so I'm happy to talk about football, but I'm not going to get caught into commenting in any way, shape or form on the family matter.
At the corner of my eye, I saw my brother was standing behind the cameras, just listening in, and they were just acting as a bit of support for me, and it almost broke down in the press conference. But yeah, I felt for the people around me. I feel like I could handle it, but I felt for my brother who had been wrapped into it. I felt for my partner, Charlotte, who's now my wife. Like she was dragged through the mud with the whole thing and put on the front page as well. And we were only sort of 3 years into a relationship then. But I think football clubs are great places of connection and community. And I remember John Longmire came over to my place and had dinner with me that night, and just the support was always there. And actually, when we went down to play Geelong, my brother was on the cusp of reserves footy and was struggling to crack into the team, so he was on the Swans list. And the club had pulled him out of the reserves game and flew him down to Geelong the night before. And he presented my 200th Guernsey to me before the game. And very emotional, and the players were just wrapped their arms around me. And I think that got me through it. Now, that's 10 years ago now. I was 29. Yeah, I was 29. And as I said, captain of a big club that had high expectations, and all of a sudden it's just a spotlight on me, which if you're a player in a team, you're just like, I don't want this at all. But that's what happened, let alone something of a public nature or private nature becoming public. So that's just what happened, and just had to deal with it. And unfortunately, my relationship with my parents now is at a much better place. And I think having children and, wanting to show them that forgiveness is real, right? You can forgive. And so we've sort of reconnected as of sort of 3 years ago, and had conversations. And I'm really thankful to them that they've wanted to be a part of this next chapter with us. So, but yeah, the time, mate, it was not something that you would ever wish. And it's sort of rack your head around how that happens. But yeah, club's a powerful place.
Thank you for sharing. I know you haven't shared that. 3 kids later, you've got 3-year-old now and 2 8-month-old twins, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yes.
You're only 3 years into a relationship. You're not married. You don't have kids. So you're still in that dating phase, or a little bit more than dating, but you haven't gone that next level. Mm. That must have been a real test for you to just stand there and try and separate from the emotion. I often talk about we have emotions. You can get had by your emotions. Had you been taught skills? Did you have anyone working with the Swannies then back in psychology or mental skills, or did you have a mentor? Just how to extrapolate yourself from the emotions?
No, to be honest, not really. I mean, we had part-time psychologists but that was if you felt like going and having a chat. But no, it was just based on I reacted with my own experiences, maybe being able to put setbacks behind me and move on. Like I said, I had it all throughout growing up when you were told you're not good enough, you're too small, so fighting to tell people that they were wrong. And then a footy career, you're constantly in this weekly audit of, okay, this happened, I played poorly, okay, learn that, move on. So you can take yourself away from, I think you train that over a footy career, and that's what I think footy players do well, or certainly a lot do well. And this was probably another example. The challenge with this one was it was of a deeply personal nature, and it brought in my partner who was being labelled as a particular person. I'm trying to defend her. She didn't sign up for what had gone on, and also try to shut the situation down, but then worry about a game on the weekend against Geelong, which was pivotal to our season. So, yeah, it was challenging. To be fair, I look back and I'm like, I don't know how the hell you did that as well. But what I do take out from it was just the level of support and from the club, from the players, and players come up, don't worry, we got you this week. Like, we've got you. Like, we're with you 100%. Like, that was probably what helped more than anything.
There's a period where every time I'd catch up with you in Sydney for a coffee, you had a new kid. The last couple of years.
So where are you going with that?
Twins. Any more? Do you want a bigger family, or is 3 enough?
Three's enough at the moment.
Twins must be fun.
Twins is very fun. Yes, I just told you, like, our mornings at the moment are 5:30 wake ups with 3 kids in a bed, and so no, I love it. It's challenging. There's no doubt. Like, no, I actually think it's probably one of the most challenging periods of my life. Like, the footy was somewhat easy in that, as I told you before, you can control what you can control. Like, if I was overly tired or fatigued, like, I knew what I had to do to try to get back to being in an okay state. You got twins that are like up through the night, and there's no reprieve, and that's continuous. That's really challenging for both parents to try to get through. But Charlotte and I got a great relationship. We've obviously been through a lot together, and I think that's just strengthened our relationship more than anything. So we're loving it, and like, I want to be a really present dad as much as I can, and that's probably why we didn't have kids when I played footy, because it was like I knew how selfish that role was, and I had to look after myself all the time. I've got a lot of respect for players who manage to do that with kids, and it's unfortunately there's an unhealthy burden on the partner that's have to raise kids as well, because it is such a selfish industry we live in.
Do you want your kids to be elite athletes?
I want them to be happy whatever they do. Like, that's very cliche, but I grew up, it said it was a rugby league dominated household, and almost like the status was just based on play professional sport, and that's succeeding in life. But my parents were never pushy into which sport or what it was, and I do thank them for that. I love sport. That was it. So whatever they choose to do, if it's sport or if it's otherwise, just want to be there to support them all the way through it. Yeah.
Has anyone in the room got young kids? I can see the collective. Oh. Well, what age do you think you get to where your kids are old enough that it gets easier?
Please help me.
Any advice?
No, there's no.
There's no. Little people, little problems. Big people, big problems.
That's some perspective for me. So yes.
You spent a bit of time at KPMG, where I worked for a while, and that's where we got reconnected with a couple of mutual friends. So you've gone from playing AFL, working for the Sydney Swans, and working for a global consulting firm. Was that as much of a shock for your system as it was for a lot of other graduates when they go into a world like that, or did you flourish in that environment?
I was looking forward to it. I didn't think it would come as quickly as it did, because I started studying when I was about 26, 27, went to Sydney Uni and did a grad cert, and then ended up completing my MBA online and through AIB, which is out of Adelaide. one of the few that were offering this back in those days. Now online MBAs are bloody everywhere. So, but I wanted to educate myself, one through experience, and no disrespect to my father, but he played in an era where it wasn't full time, the money wasn't there, and I saw the struggles of his career post football because of that, and a lot of his friends and certainly a lot of ex teammates that were coming out of the game and were struggling to find what was next. So I jumped on the front foot there, completed my MBA, and then Tom Harley, who's now at the time was head of football and had just transitioned into the CEO's role at Sydney, was my final year was sort of like, well, what do you want to do when you finish up? I said, well, coaching's not for me. I don't want to be a coach, and media is not really for me. I like this sport and business connection, and he made up a role for me within the commercial team, which was going to launch their new Sydney Network product, which is quite common now amongst a lot of AFL clubs. It's a corporate business, like B2B networking program, leveraging culture, leadership, bringing businesses together and business people. The Swans didn't have anything like that. And I was going to be the one to launch it. So he's like, I'm going to give you a budget and all these things and parameters, you just go and make it work. And so that was, I guess, a softer landing into the corporate space for me, but it only lasted kind of 3 months because we're talking about March 2020.
COVID.
Yeah, with something small just sort of popped up, and all of a sudden footy industry just shuts down. So forget about networking stuff. It was done. Now, at the same time, a recruiter had been in contact with me who was looking to fill a role within KPMG's M&A team, and was talking to an ex-colleague of mine and sort of mentioned me and my background and what I was doing, and had the call. And it was to head up their origination function, so looking to source new deal flow, work with private equity companies, find business owners. They were really into mid-market, private capital, valuations of 40 million up to 500 million. I think the year that I got there, the Melbourne team, we were a national team, but the Melbourne team at Brisbane had just completed the Stone and Wood into Lion deal, the Fermentum Group, for about 500 million bucks. So I'm walking into this. I interviewed for the role and then was given the job through COVID, and I saw it as an opportunity to jump and pivot and try something completely out there. I didn't know M&A. I did not know M&A, but I knew I could, with the skills that I'd learned from footy, in terms of adapting and learning and be a sponge and go to the partners and sit in those meetings and learn the lingo. I could pick it up pretty quickly, and it wasn't long before we started to get some things happening. So we worked with Quadrant Private Capital, who've owned like Darryl Lee Chocolate and Fitness First and things like that. We worked with Quadrant around a new sector they were interested in, and at that point in time, everyone was getting COVID pets, right? Everyone's getting a dog, and so they're like, we're really interested in the pet industry. Can you do some research for us? Can we sort of unlock what's around there in the country? What private companies are out there? So, and this is where I think I started to get really interested in it and leverage the KPMG network, and you'd know about it. Like, it's, if you want something done within there, you can get it. There are resources, you just have to find them. There are resources there. They're not short on budget, that's for sure. But went in with their IT team and found some data scientists, and we started to scrape the net for particular themes and companies, and just started reaching out and found a company called Prime 100. Prime 100's a pet food manufacturer out of Melbourne. They'd just grown into a second facility, and they were looking for capital to scale. So I introduced them to Quadrant, and ended up getting the deal done for. I think the valuation was around 120 million bucks. And now it's worth about 500 million based on the capital. So I'm this is in the first 4 months that I was there. Like,
did they give you some backhand equity?
No, I wish they had it, but I think that sort of automatically gave me some rep and some respect in that industry. And so I really enjoyed my time there. And
how long were you there?
I was there for 3.5 years. It just sort of coincided after our first son was born, Alfie was born, and we were thinking about where we wanted to raise kids, and Perth became a legitimate option because my wife's from Perth and her family's all here, and we just made a call that we were going to do that. And so I resigned and came over here. And then Don Pike, who is now the CEO of West Coast, had just become CEO at that point in time, and called up and was asking what I was doing and if there was an interest for me to come back into sports admin. And yeah, I probably thought that I would get back in at some point. I didn't realise how or with who, but it just sort of lined up that it was the right opportunity to do that. So I love my time at KPMG. I reckon, as you would know, like the process and diligence and the structure of how you get things done can be full on, can be a bit overboard. But I learned that out of coming from a footy environment where it was quick and fast. So there's a delicate balance of the two, which I think I've taken with me.
In my time, that was invaluable. Just about politics, negating different groups, people, leverage was the big thing. I'd always been more of an individual as a runner, and then to go to a big business. So yeah, it's invaluable. But following your career arc, a lot of footballers stay in football. We've got some mutual friends who are heads of football, coaches around footy departments, and you say, how long have you been in AFL or NRL or whatever code, rugby league, rugby union? They'll go 30 or 40 years. So it's a long time in the same place. If we could have sat down with someone and said, hey, carve out the perfect transition from elite athlete or in defence, this has some real parallels, to then go to your next career. I think it's good to step outside, so get some different skills, maybe study something. So that time at KPMG taught you diversity, different speed. So then you come back, you got the jacket. Can you put it on? I haven't seen you wear the West Coast jacket. So for
put it on.
people that listen to the podcast,
always a friend. I hate that.
Because I've seen you in the red and white for so long.
It's a bit different.
Looks good. So we've got a couple of WCE fans in the room, no doubt. So what did it feel like when you wore that jacket for the first time after wearing the red and white? And so cheer, we'll play the Swans theme song.
Thanks, mate. I've heard your podcast, so I know what you're going to do. No, it was a new opportunity, right? Like it's funny. I'll always be connected to the Swans. That's it. That's a given. So I see them now. They're doing great. But I'm not involved in the club. My passion now is around the West Coast Eagles and helping bring that club back up to where it should be. I've been amazed. I've been in the club for 2 years now. My role is outside of footy. So I sit on the executive team with Don and COO, the CFO, and some general managers of different departments. So we've got a consumer and membership, and then a brand, marketing, digital growth exec member. Mine is really around innovation and club data. So how we use club data to grow the business of the club, looking at who our members are, where they come from, how we can trial new things. And one of those was, even this year, we have traditionally always held a member thank you round for members at the end of the year. It's almost the last home game. And we were looking through, and it hasn't correlated with a drive in attendance to those games. And part of it is because the club hasn't been performing well on field. And I think there's a genuine fatigue when you are down the bottom. They won't turn up. So we flipped it this year. We flipped the script, and we did member thank you round one, and we got close to 50,000 people there, which is a great effort, because there's a hype. There's a genuine hype around the club and optimism early in the year. So what has amazed me about West Coast is just the size of the club. Like we would employ 160 people across, and we employ people in the regions too. So big regional presence, which I haven't seen at many other clubs. Sydney would employ facilities. You've seen the facilities. The facilities are incredible, and I think for young players now, it's a bit like that everywhere. That's the expectation, but you should never think that you don't have enough resources, because the facilities that we've got at Lathlane are amazing. So, yeah, the size of the club, the power, the presence, and just the members in general. Like 4 years of really challenging period on field, yet we haven't dropped below third in the total membership tally for any year. Most of the time we're either first or second, and that's up against Collingwood. And Collingwood have been playing in grand finals and winning premierships. So if we sit second, coming last, it says a bit about the West Coast audience and how loyal they are. It also excites me for when we can turn it around and all of a sudden the juggernaut starts going the other way. Because I think that's what we're here for.
I hope that's next.
Yeah.
And just to close out, because I got excited about your facilities, What would the Swan staff be compared to the
Swans are probably about 80 to 90, right? So we're almost double. It's a huge operation.
Huge difference in human capital. Yeah. And when you go out to the centre, West Coast Eagles, I was blown away. You've got two fields. One's Optus Oval dimensions, the other one is
the MCG.
So if you're training for different games...
Just because we could, right?
Because you'll realise that the audience, there's two fields depending on where they're playing.
Yeah.
So West Coast Eagles, it's not a lack of money in the bank. Like, it's publicly known that they're one of, I think, the richest club. Yeah. When you look at cash in the bank, you've got all these resources. Yet how does a club go from winning a grand final in 2018 to wooden spoon? That's a big shift, isn't it, in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, yes, it is. Again, I sort of wasn't there through that period, so it's hard to say. But what you can see within my take on it has been, I think for clubs in general, right, in the AFL, you've got to have a focus to win now. Absolutely, that's what we're here for. But there's also got to be an eye on what the next 2 to 4 years, 2 to 3 years looks like, and planning for that. And I know Sydney were involved in a lot of the list management discussions, and move players on potentially earlier than they should have or warranted, but out of the interest of the club had to do so because they wanted to regenerate. And I think West Coast on the back of 2018 and winning that flag, obviously trusted all the people and players well, but also had this point in time where they, if they had their time again, may have made some different calls.
Because then you're not getting those young players coming through.
That's right.
3-4 years later, you've got an older list.
That's right. And they were unlucky too. I mean, a couple of players retired early through concussion. A couple of draft picks, this is where the draft comes in hand, a couple of draft picks were just misses. So you add all that up, and quite quickly you can find yourself in a hole. And that's where the club has tried to now has to dig itself out of. I think what we're starting to see, we've moved some players on, we've got some draft capital where we've needed, we've got some really high-end talent there at the club, but they're young. They're 18 to 20, so you can't rely on them to be lifting the weight and bringing the club back. There were some recruits like Liam Baker and Jack Graham from Richmond who have come in and been senior established players that have really helped drive some of the culture and high performance aspects of it. Jack's injured now, he's got a pec issue, and Dev Robertson from Brisbane, who was involved in the Brisbane culture. So they've gone strategically after those that are on the fringes or had been at those successful clubs to come in and teach this young group. I'm confident if we can get that right, that this next wave, providing they stay together, can be the next nucleus of what West Coast is. When it was the Judd Cousins, the talent era. It's not just talent, it's the talent and hard work piece, which we've got to get right now.
You've got all the West Coast Eagles supporters in the room on the edge of their seats. Top 8 next year after?
Well, top 10 now, so it might be even more of a chance. Top 10 makes finals, so they've changed the rules there. Why not? Why not? I don't see why.
It's a very political way to answer it, isn't it? Why not?
Yeah, but I've seen it. I've seen clubs turn around quickly. Yes, there's I think you call it the reps and sets. You've got to do the reps and sets.
Oh boy, you've been listening.
I have been listening to your podcast. That absolutely rings true. So, but North Melbourne are probably a similar club who have been down for a couple of years. Now they're sort of starting to pave their way, and they're on the border of finals. And there's no reason we can't replicate that and bounce back.
Good. Looking forward to seeing it.
Yes.
I'm also looking forward to some questions from the audience. So we'll now throw it out to the audience. If you want to whack your hand up if you'd like to ask a question.
You are a sportsman. When you transit your life on sportsman towards a normal person, like day-to-day, like what we do, how do you translate those principles towards your routine life?
Well, I mean, my personal life now is challenging with kids, so I try to distinguish when I'm at work, it's work, and when I'm home, I'm dad, right? So that's that period where I think you're in the car and you get home, but very quickly it's the self-regulate, trying to get back into that zone. So I don't take work with me into personal life. Now I'd like to be. I think fitness and health is a also important piece to this. I'd like to spend some time to actually find the time to do that. But even if it's just at work, I've got a team of 6, right? So I often just take if I'm doing a one-on-one, it might be a walk around the block and just get outside and get some air. Like, it's just trying to find some balance. So it's pretty chaotic at the moment. Dad life and work is different.
Yes.
I'm curious about how you build a good culture and what it's like when you face challenges and people will seem to be draining down that culture and how you work through that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I listened to a talk where John Longmire was doing a corporate speak, and someone asked him, what does good culture look like? And it was like, it hit me when he said it. I've never forgotten it. He said, well, put it this way. If I was to grab anyone in the room and plonk you at any point in time at the club, it'd be what you instantly see. Like, what do you see on the training track? What do you see what happens in the change rooms? Are people challenging each other? What behaviours are they letting go by? What are they pulling up? And I think that's a sort of stuck with me. It doesn't matter. It's yes, there's structured pieces like this where you could be in a room and talk about culture, but it's often what goes on away from the structured piece. It's what happens in the day-to-day conversation. And I think to build that, you need really strong leaders. All right. So leaders, Ruzi was probably the first one. He wanted the leaders to drive the show. Right. So it wasn't necessarily about coaches and head coaches telling you what to do. If the leaders weren't the ones that were driving the standards and behaviours, then you wouldn't, almost next to no chance of getting the younger players to buy in as well. And that stemmed from every year we would have a leadership group vote. So we had values and behaviours of how we wanted to be seen as a team, which it's public, was for a long time there, and I believe it still is, was hard disciplined and relentless. We changed the last one midway through my career to Hard Discipline United, just for that, I guess, more belonging and together piece, which we thought was missing. And underneath that underpins some very simple behaviours that we thought best exemplified that were very easy to do for anyone in the room. And every year on the cusp of the season, we would do a leadership group vote where all the players would circle up, have a bit of paper, and you'd write down your 5 to 1 of who you wanted to be in the leadership group vote. And then you'd read it out just like this. You'd just read out 5 votes, Luke Parker, 4 votes, Josh Kennedy. And that was how we did it. And we drew the tally, and then the leadership group was voted. So in that, I often found there was great feedback for some younger players too. Like, it was an opportunity to just share what you've seen. What do you see that maybe other people haven't seen? And that also creates the culture of like, well, I've missed that, but that's great to know that person's doing that and seeing that. So yeah, I think that was part of it. But culture, it's like, it's funny because you can spend so much time trying to build culture, and then very quickly it can erode. That is the challenge. That is the challenging piece as well. Yeah, I think it's just constant. It's constantly, you've got to be doing what you say you're going to do, be accountable to it.
As a leader yourself, especially like of a team, you've got juniors looking up to you and stuff. What would you say was like your core main value that you wanted to bring as a leader for yourself and for the rest of the team?
I think when you get thrust into leadership, I was 25 when I was announced co-captain, right? So that's, for me, that's young, like that. But I'd spent years trying to build up what my role was within the team and focus on myself. And then very quickly you start to look around at, well, if we're going to improve as a team, how do I get other players to improve as well? So when it's almost like the lens opens up when you become a leader as to what's going on around you. So constantly at training, how's the vibe at training? How is so-and-so feeling this week? I think my strength was really understanding and knowing my role within the team. And I did a lot of work in researching the opposition, researching the players I was on. And I wanted the players to understand that it didn't just come naturally. Like I said, I wasn't talented player by any stretch, but I did it through hard work and the extras. So for a young player to come in, and if they come in on their day off, they'd see me up in the rooms doing researches on opposition players and teams as a captain of the club. But that was just, that's what it took. So I wanted to just more show the way for that young group coming through. But as I got older, it was the empathy side of things, I think, probably didn't come as naturally to me when I was younger, but as you get older, you do start to be curious about how players are feeling, how you can help them, and that's something that I learned to build throughout my career. But early days, it was lead through showing and being clear about what it took to get the best out of myself and know my role really, really well. And even like my role now within the club, I've got some juniors that sit there. I've got everyone that has an individual development plan, and very clearly that they know what their role is within the club and what their tasks are and how it relates to the KPIs. That's been something that I brought into my department, which we haven't. Two people in my team that have been there for 20 years, and they're like, I've never done this before. But that's just what I know, and I know it works.
Kieren, you spoke about how understanding a role was pretty crucial to you as a leader. I think almost everyone in defence has had that experience when you go through organisational change at any level, where the left and right of arc of your responsibility starts to become kind of blurred. And, understanding your role, you might know that that's really critical. However, it's pretty much out of your hands at some stages. What's kind of remediation for times like this where the lines of your bounds are kind of getting very blurred?
I've played with the players that you're trying to do too much, or they are blurred in what their actual role is. But I think if those around you can identify that, or you can start to identify that and ask for feedback or ask for questions, you get a lot more clearer on what your actual your main objective is. If you can simplify things for people, it's so much easier to just know this is what I'm going to do. What I've found players get into trouble is they try to do too much, not through lack of effort or that they want to do what's best for the team, but often what's best for the team is keeping very simple to your role. This is what your role is. Yes.
Let's say you get a chance to go back in your life. Let's say you're 20 years old. What's the one advice, or what's the one thing you'll do differently?
I think if I look back at it, like 15 years, it has gone, it's so quick. And at the time when you're 19, 20, and young players are like this now, you don't see that end point. So you probably take it for granted more than anything. So I would probably say I'd like to live in those moments a bit more. Even after 2012 and winning the flag, and yes, I went to America, but I got straight back and was training straight away. Most of the times when seasons finished, within 2 weeks, I was back doing something. I was back in the thick of it, trying to focus on the next season. So there wasn't a lot of reflection. And even when you play a game, you play the game, you get the address from the coach, you go in the rooms, the ice comes on, you do your recovery, and then it's, all right, who we got next week? After a really good win. So I'd probably enjoy those moments more with teammates and just reflect when you get an hour or two to just sit in the rooms and just talk crap and just embrace that moment of winning. That was part of it's part of the psyche that you get put into. Win the game, okay, move on, who we got, how are we going to get better, what do we do wrong?
It's a great link to say thank you today for not taking us for granted as an audience. Thank you for being so open and being present. And you've spoken about a couple of things today that you haven't spoken about. So from my end, mate, thank you very much. And I've learned a lot about you, and I could just see from the interaction and the facial expression of the audience, so is everybody in the room. I think one of the key takeouts when you listen to Kieren speak, success leaves clues. And I'd say your success in your career and life, it's 100% your fault. You've taken those opportunities, you've had hardships, you've learned, you've adapted, and you're here today because it is 100% your fault. So thank you very much for bringing the whole version of you into the room today.
No, thank you, mate. Pleasure.